All right, welcome everyone. I know folks are still in line getting food and others are in the back eating and I'm going to get the program started just so we don't run out of time, but encourage you to continue eating even during the program. I'm Morris Ratner. I'm the Provost and Academic Dean, and I welcome you all here. This is one of my absolutely favorite events of the year because it honors excellence in teaching, a project that goes to the heart of our mission as a center of higher learning and as a law school. The Rutter Endowment provides UC Law an annual $10,000 award for the faculty member each year who best models teaching excellence. The award, founded by famed legal publisher William Rutter, is presented annually to leading legal educators at top law schools across California. Prior year winners at UC Law have included such accomplished and beloved professors as Rule Schiller, John Diamond, Lois Whitehorn, Heather Field, Robin Feldman, Hadar Avaram, Kate Block, Karen Musalo, Roger Park, George Bisharat, David Takash, Dave Owen, Lynn Spencer, Manoj Viswanathan, Scott Dodson, and last year's winner, Alina Ball, who will, as we traditionally do, say a few words about this year's winner. I really want to thank the Rutter family for their generosity and their support of teaching excellence. The gift has had a truly lasting effect on our community and speaks to our core values. According to the terms of the Rutter Endowment gift, the outstanding professor is to be chosen each year by a committee that includes the provost and academic dean, a student, an alum, and the prior year's winner. So the 2023-24 selection committee included Professor Ball, last year's winner, UC Law alum Mauricio Grande, U-Class president Kyle Freeman, and me. We selected Professor Moscato as the winner for this year unanimously. So the order of presentation for the ceremony will be that I'm going to say a few words about Professor Moscato. I will be followed by Professor Ball, and then we invited just three of many students we could have invited of Professor Moscato's prior students who will talk about his impact on their educational and professional journeys. Before I speak about Stefano, I did want to thank Cynthia Diaz, our faculty events manager, for setting us up for today. And I think I saw Ashley Judea in our team who's here supporting her. And I want to thank our IT department for their help today as well. And I want to acknowledge the presence of Stefano's wife, Kristen Holmquist, who's apparently more popular than Stefano. And Stefano's extended family who are here today and helping us celebrate Stefano's achievement in excellence. So I am especially excited to celebrate Stefano. I consider him not only to be a fabulous teacher for reasons I'll explain, a wonderful thought partner on educational program design and assessment and student success, but a personal friend with whom I've had the privilege of working very closely at least since I became provost and academic dean, actually before that. And I can't imagine UC Law having achieved the successes that we have achieved in reforming our academic program to turn it into an equity-based program, with the principle being that all students should have an equal opportunity to learn how to succeed in law school. I can't imagine having taken that philosophical journey and approach without Stefano's partnership. So it's great to celebrate him. And I will list just a few of his accomplishments outside the classroom without meaning at all to create an exhaustive list. In 2016, when the law school faced a bar passage crisis, Stefano was poised to help us come up with solutions because he had previously served on faculty committees, brainstorming ways to enhance student learning. In 2017, when I became academic dean, he took over my prior decanal role as basically head of our academic skills and academic success department. And he really built that department into what we understand it to be today, which is OASIS, an integrated approach to skills instruction that has the philosophy that I described of being transparent with students and not subjecting students to a first fall semester where they have to figure out the secret that no one tells them. He served ably in that role for about 5 years, and among other accomplishments, working with a dedicated team of academic skills specialist faculty, helped develop what we now call our SAC program for 1Ls, and the law and process model of upper division, paired doctrinal and skills instruction, and was responsible for spearheading many other innovations that I think have made law school not only more effective, but a kinder, gentler place for most students, we hope. And most importantly, in my mind, he's brought a scholarly rigor to thinking about how to design educational experiences for students, both at the classroom level and at the academic program level, that's really paid off. I will mention that LEOP, our Legal Educational Opportunity Program, which is for students who have overcome adversity before matriculating in law school, has always had a special place in Stefano's heart. And he's put that respect and admiration for the students who get admitted through that program into action by always being a partner to Elizabeth McGriff, who leads that program, and a mentor to all of our students, but including putting extra time into mentoring our LEOP students. And I know our LEOP students appreciate that, as do the rest of us on the faculty and at UC Law. So I can say many, many more things about Stefano's strengths, both as a colleague and administrator, a program designer, and a teacher. But I actually think his students, from whom we're going to hear today, are best equipped to really sing Stefano's praises. But as I do when announcing the winner each year, I did want to just give you a few quotes that I pulled really at random from his end of semester teaching evals that give you just a sense of the kind of feedback that we get from Stefano's students. Here are just 3 short comments. The first one is, I have never had a professor that cared about students as much as you, Professor Moscato. Your love for teaching truly shows in your course material and structure of classes. From your casebook to your PowerPoints, I can tell how much you truly care about the success of your students. You honestly make law school significantly better, and I am truly thankful to have gotten the chance to be your student. Another student wrote, favorite class of 1L year so far, and I have no interest in litigation. Moscato is engaging, does great in-class hypos, examples, and regularly tests our understanding in exam-like formats. Another student wrote, you can tell how much Professor Moscato loves teaching by the way he leads lecture and fields students' questions. He is approachable and makes his expectations of students clear. I also appreciate how helpful his slides and reader have been while reviewing the course. He goes above and beyond to help students who struggle with various topics. He has been very supportive of 1Ls transitioning to law school and is my favorite professor this semester. That's just the tip of the iceberg and the kinds of comments we get from students. And what's most meaningful about them is they really give concrete examples of the investment in teaching that's really time intensive and a labor of love. And so it's really Stefano, thank you. And I will hand you your award later and ask you to make a few comments as well. But right now, I'd like to call up Professor Ball, last year's winner, to say a few words.
I knew Dean Ratner would steal some of my quotes, so I've had to make some last-minute edits. But thank you, Dean Ratner, for allowing me to say a few words about Stefano this afternoon. I have the privilege of being BART buddies with Stefano. So we live directly across the street from each other in Berkeley, and we often teach on the same days. Sorry, this is really hot. So we regularly meet, sometimes at BART, sometimes on our walk to or from BART. And I really value these interactions with Stefano. And I will just say that, you know, sometimes it's at the end of the day and sometimes it's late. I mean, it is dark out and it is me and Stefano and some questionable characters on BART. but his enthusiasm really shines through. I often find myself using these opportunities to pick his brains on topics related to our students and our classrooms. And while I didn't have access to his student evaluations until this selection process, because that would have been weird and unethical, it has been abundantly clear to me through the years how much care and attention Stefano puts into his teaching. It's demonstrated in his students' comments about his lecture slides or the real-world examples that he uses to make material clearer. I will say of note, I asked one of my students what I should say, and she said, "You have to mention the animation. He puts animation into his slides." So these slides are apparently amazing. I've got to get my hands on them. Or his willingness to meet individually with students to discuss their writing. But it is also clear to his colleagues in his enthusiasm about discussing classroom instruction, the integration of technology into the classroom, the need for formative assessments to monitor student learning, and the selection of casebooks. These are not necessarily fun and exciting topics. And honestly, anytime you're willing to talk about them, Stefano is game, right? He possesses this rare gift of making complex concepts accessible, of turning stumbling blocks into stepping stones, and of nurturing the potential within each of his students. As one student wrote, "Moscato is the best professor I have ever had. Lucky to have had him my first semester in law school, 11 out of 10. Another student, his slides are also the best and clearly synthesize the material. Another wrote, "I have loved every moment of Moscato's class, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point." He goes out of his way to make sure we understand his PowerPoint and his PowerPoints are very useful for review after class and in advance of tests. Lastly, Professor Moscato is one of the best professors I've ever had. He makes the material easily digestible, and I'm walking away with a superior understanding. In sum, Stefano personifies that teaching is not merely a profession. For those who excel at teaching, like he does, it is truly a calling that requires creativity, innovation, boundless empathy, and persistence. In the face of our regular missteps as professors, he has this willingness to strive to do his work better. Stefano embodies all of these facets and all of these qualities in the many facets of his work. Beyond what Stefano accomplishes in his classroom lies an even deeper commitment, a commitment to fostering a culture of inclusivity and belonging at UC Law. To borrow from one of his student evals, "You honestly made law school significantly better, and I am truly thankful to have gotten a chance to be your student." Another wrote, "He is student focused and goes above and beyond to make sure that students are supported and have an opportunity to learn different subjects." Stefano recognizes that education isn't, this is me again, sorry. Stefano, I did so many quotes, so okay. Stefano recognizes that education is not just about imparting knowledge. It's about empowering individuals to reach their fullest potential, which cannot be done without learning individual circumstances, understanding student backgrounds, and addressing their personal circumstances. One of my students commented to me how important it was that Stefano met individually with every single one of his 1Ls, but then went above and beyond that to then also have secondary meetings with all of his LEOP students. Legal education is an isolating environment. Most students do not feel seen or valued while they're in law school. And this is not unique to any one law school. These are national statistics that I'm building on here. This is just a feature of legal education. And this is particularly true of students of color and students that have experienced great adversity, like our wonderful LEOP students. So having professors like Stefano makes a significant impact and needs to be underscored. In the face of the challenging times in legal education, Stefano stands as an example of resilience, adapting to ever-changing landscapes with grace and determination. To be clear, the Rutter Award for Teaching Excellence is not merely a celebration of your achievements in the classroom, Stefano. It is an expression of our profound gratitude for your tireless dedication, unwavering passion, profound impact on the lives of countless students, and for helping to create a culture of inclusion at our institution through your support of LEOP. Congratulations on this well-deserved honor, and thank you for everything you do.
Thank you, Alina. That was really beautiful. And I would just take a moment to pause. If you're in the back and you would like to sit down, don't feel any pressure, but we do have some open chairs over here. So it's now my pleasure to introduce the first of three student speakers, Adriana Mendez, who was also my student, who graduated in 2018 and is now Senior Privacy Counsel at Black Blaze. Come on up.
Hello. I am extremely privileged and honored to be here. When I received your DM, he DM'd me. When I received your DM, I cried. I was so excited about it because it's rarely that you ever get to get feedback from your professors in a way that makes you really understand how they respect and view you. And so that in itself was such an honor for me. And so I'm really excited to be here to speak on how you impacted our lives. Imagine a classroom where the boundaries of learning are consistently pushed, where every question leads to deeper understanding, and where students feel uniquely seen and supported. This isn't just an ideal. It's the reality created by Professor Moscato in his classroom. As someone privileged to experience his teaching firsthand, I stand before you to share how Professor Moscato has been more than a professor. He's been a pivotal figure in our journey through law school. His dedication to excellence and his unwavering support and his ability to inspire confidence has transformed the challenging path of a legal education. Professor Moscato embodies the essence of what makes a great educator. Someone who not only teaches the law, but instills the values and critical thinking skills necessary to navigate it successfully. For most, law school is more than an academic endeavor. It's a journey where we come face to face with our deepest insecurities, learning to speak the formidable language of the law and wielding it with precision and purpose. This journey can feel particularly daunting for the first generation students who often embark on this path without the navigational aids that come from growing up in families with lawyers, doctors, and other professionals. For us, the world of law is uncharted territory, vast and intimidating. Enter Professor Moscato. In his classroom, a space that could easily mirror the daunting aspects of this journey, we found instead a sanctuary of learning. Here, intimidation was replaced with encouragement, and the fear of giving the wrong answer was displaced with his warm, approachable demeanor. He didn't teach us just the law. He showed us that our voices mattered, that our perspectives were valuable. His genuine care for our success and well-being bridged any gap that might have existed between us. And despite his expertise and authority, he never felt distant. Rather, he was the cool, smart uncle we all admired, familiar and approachable. In the world where student-professor dynamic can often be marked by formality and distance, Professor Moscato broke down those barriers, fostering an environment of mutual respect and genuine connection. For students like us, he became more than a teacher. He was a trusted mentor, an advocate, and a constant source of support. Reflecting on my own journey as a single parent, juggling dual roles of student and as a mother, Professor Moscato's classroom was a haven. My son, Damien, would sometimes sit quietly in the back as I delved into the complexities of the law. Never once did I feel unwelcomed for that, or that my circumstances were a burden to him in our classroom. This acceptance and support meant the world to me, illustrating the depth of Professor Moscato's understanding and compassion for his students and their circumstances. So as we celebrate Professor Moscato's well-deserved recognition today, let us not only applaud his academic achievements, but also acknowledge the profound personal impact that he has had on our lives. It is not just the legal principles he taught us that we carry forward, but the inclusive, supportive environment he fostered and fosters, making us feel valued, welcomed, no matter what our individual circumstances may be. Professor Moscato, thank you for being more than just a teacher to us, for being a mentor, an advocate, and a beacon of understanding and support. Your impact goes well beyond the classroom, touching the lives of not just your students, their families as well. For that, we are eternally grateful. Thank you.
And our second student speaker is Adriana Barajas, who is a class of 22 graduate and a staff attorney at Eviction Defense Collective.
That's a really tough act to follow. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. I'm short, but I am short. I'm happy to be here today. I my namesake Adriana, also was very honored to receive your text message. I was actually studying for a second bar exam when I received your message, and it was like just the right moment to receive it. It gave me the push that I needed to be able to finish studying, and it was very nice. But Ratner said, I am an eviction defense attorney, and I just want to share a little bit about what my journey was in law school and how Professor Moscato really impacted that. Professor Moscato was one of the very first people I met when I first got to law school. I was part of the LEOP program, which has been mentioned a lot, and Professor Moscato was always there. He was very participatory in it and just very involved. He was also my civil procedure professor during my very first semester at law school. And I really struggled in my first semester at law school, not necessarily with understanding the concepts, but the application of specifically civil procedure was very, very difficult for me. And I had a hard time wrapping my head around it. I remember doing very poorly on my civil procedure midterm. And I think it might've been my very first law school exam. And I was so embarrassed. I was so nervous. I was very worried that law school just wasn't going to be for me. And I remember receiving my paper back, and Professor Moscato had wrote on the top of my paper, Adriana, come see me immediately. And I was like, oh God. It's very stressful, but going to office hours completely changed the trajectory of my time at law school. It was a very welcoming environment, and he really understood where my knowledge was lacking and why I was making the mistakes that I was making. And he helped me see these things and correct them. His teaching style just really worked for me. As many people have mentioned, his PowerPoints, they are amazing. They're really good. The animations, chef's kiss. And I reference them again in studying for the bar exam a second time. So very useful. Anyone that knew me in law school also knew that I had a very hard time accepting that the law is not always set up to help or protect the most vulnerable in our communities. And I really struggled with that. I had a really hard time with that. and I made it everyone's problem. Professor Moscato was very like welcoming of that. And it was one of the spaces where I felt just like absolutely safe being honest about my feelings about the law. He always gave me the space to express my thoughts, and he always took his students' feedback to heart. And I think that's one of the best qualities that an educator can have, especially for an educator of first generation students and students of color. I ended up taking Civil Procedure 2 because I wanted another class with Professor Moscato. And at the time, I was certain that I would never use any of this information because I was not going to be a litigator. Turns out I'm a litigator. And it's probably one of the most useful classes I've taken. It's, you know, like anytime I'm like reading the law, I'm always like, oh, that's right, Professor Moscato told me about this. But Professor Moscato has been a great mentor to me, and he's continued to help me navigate my career like throughout this time, even after graduating. I am very lucky. I work at the Superior Court, or like that's, you know, where I end up regularly. So I walk past here often. And I still stop by his office whenever I can to get advice and just ask him about my career. I honestly can't think of another person or another professor that I had during law school that deserves this more than you. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Our last student speaker before I hand Stefano his award and ask him to say a few words is Nora Katz, class of 2023, who's now an associate attorney at Mattern Law Group.
Wow. They should have redone the order for those speeches. I hope I live up to you guys. So my first ever law school exam, I had a little card by my computer because we were on Zoom school, and it said IRAC, because that was like the biggest thing that we learned our first year. And I wanted to remind myself when I was writing exams, IRAC, IRAC, IRAC. So on this card, I wrote, IRAC, don't cry and don't talk for too long. So those are kind of my three guiding principles of this speech. Dean Ratner sent a very clear email that I was not to exceed 5 minutes. So felt a little attacked by that, but here we are. I'm actually going to set a timer for myself because I have practiced this speech a few times and it was about 15 minutes. So anyway, so everyone here could speak for 100 minutes about how amazing of a professor Stefano is. And I would, you know, agree with that times 100. But I think the most in my life about, in the most challenging periods of my life, like who is there and who never gave up on me, who mirrored back to me the things that maybe I didn't see in myself. Some of those people are actually like in this room beautifully. It kind of comes full circle. And when I think about law school, you are at the top of the list. Sorry, Nira. And for other periods of my life, you've been at the top of the list. And so there's countless examples of that being true. I think my first moment that I can think about is like the first time I cried in front of you on Zoom. Again, I'm a crier, so I really am going to make it through this speech without crying. And it was crazy because it was before I'd even met you in person. My first year was on Zoom, so that's the way we were all communicating. It was a very isolating year. So having someone across a Zoom screen, like handing me tissues sort of like felt very just comforting. And I, as everyone here has said, it made me feel less alone. Law school was wonderful. I'm one of the few people who liked it. It also made me not a happier person. I would say like my mental health did not improve when I was in law school. However, you know, a year out of it, I think I only think about the positive things, and that's in large part because of you and because of, you know, the friends I made and the mentors that I made. You were a mentor when I was your student, and then when I wasn't your student. When I wanted to figure out what class to take, you were the first email I would send. When I was freaking out about getting a grade that I didn't like, you were the first email I would send to comfort me. And then, you know, I graduated and you came to my graduation party, which very different vibe. Ask me about that later. And then, you know, when I was studying for the bar, which is certainly something I would not recommend to anyone, you were, again, like an email away. You did eventually give me your phone number, which I'm wondering if you regret, because you just get a lot of anxious texts from me now. It's okay if you block me periodically, wouldn't be the first. And then, you know, like, don't tell my mom, but I think you were the second person I told when I passed the bar. I think I called you. Okay, now I'm gonna get emotional. And that's like one of the happiest moments of your life, and you'll remember that forever. So thank you for all that you do. Thank you for all the lives that you've touched. I'm sure there's like tons more people that wish that they could be here. I do have work today, but I wasn't going to miss this for the world. So I want to thank you for everything you do. And I'm so excited to continue to bombard you with texts, freaking out about innocuous things, and maybe, you know, continue to have amazing moments that you get to be a part of. So thank you and congratulations.
Stefano, I'm going to ask you to come up. We'll do a handoff of the award. It used to be an award and a check, but we now wire transfer the check. So
I was looking for the big.
this is our photo. Congratulations.
If I'd fully realized that I was going to be in front of a computer, I would have loaded up a PowerPoint for you. Oh boy, it's a weird moment to listen to everybody say such wonderful things, and it's about you. It's kind of crazy, but I'm so thankful for all of you to be here. I want to say a few specific thank yous to some of the folks who are here. Alina, thank you so much for your lovely, lovely words. One of the things that Alina didn't say about our relationship, beyond that we are BART buddies and across the street neighbors, but we've actually known each other, you know, longer than that. Alina and I are both UCLA law grads. I'm going to feel fairly confident in saying the first ever back-to-back UCLA Law Rutter Award winners here. Yeah. And Alina was a student of my wife Kristen's at UCLA, and Kristen was her mentor. And so the opportunity to kind of develop that relationship, the year that you started here was the year that I became a full-time faculty member here. And so we've kind of gone through this journey together. And it's been really wonderful to have you as a colleague. Thank you. I also want to thank, of course, the Rutter family for creating and supporting this generous award. It's really quite wonderful, right, that they recognize this award recognizes that teaching is something that should be celebrated, right? That the teaching part of what we do is a really important part of what we do. And so it's really quite wonderful of them to do that. I also want to thank, quick little shout out to everyone who played a small or large part in giving me a chance to do this. I have kind of an unusual journey of getting to this point. I wasn't a traditional, didn't go through the academic scholarly route, and things had to kind of fall into place. David Young, who is a Professor Emeritus here was, I coached Little League with him many years ago when I was kind of at a crossroads in my career, kind of thinking about what shifts to make and hoping to go back into teaching. And David kind of put himself out on the line and recommended to then Academic Dean Shauna Marshall to take me on as a visiting faculty member to teach Civ Pro 2. And he didn't know anything about my teaching other than what he had seen in the way that I interacted with kids on the baseball field. And so I thank him for that. It was really, I mean, without David, I wouldn't be here probably today. And Shauna, of course, for taking a risk on me. It was a risk. And then Beth Hillman, who was the next academic dean, after being here on a basically half-time basis for a couple of years, I went to Beth's office and I pitched to her, how about we do this full time, right? I'd be happy to be your ultimate utility player, right? I'll teach anything, anytime, anywhere. And she took me quite seriously on that. I will tell you that in the first 2 years of my being a full-time faculty member here, I taught wills and trusts, federal courts, professional responsibility, employment discrimination, depositions, Civ Pro 1, Civ Pro 2, California civil procedure, and pretrial practice. Morris, I can't thank you enough. And right, you said such wonderful things about our relationship. You, of all of the people that I've talked about so far, took a huge risk on me, right? We interacted on committees, right? I was on these academic, one was a legal writing, one was an academic success committee that we'd interacted on. There was just something about the way that I engaged in those committees that Morris saw something in me, that as he was stepping away from the Associate Dean for Academic Professional Success into becoming academic dean, he suggested that I might want to take over that role. And that was just a really lovely thing. And I really have appreciated working with you so much on all these things. You've been such a supporter of what I do, even though sometimes we don't necessarily agree on what the right steps are. You're always willing to listen. And I really appreciate that in you. And I look forward to continuing to work with you on many other things. David Levine, who is here, kind of took me under his wing when I first started here. Welcomed me into the civil procedure community, invited me to the Civ Pro forums, saw something in me, or maybe I was just enough of a sucker that he decided to ask me to be a co-author on the California Civil Procedure casebook that we have published. And thank you for that. That was really kind. Lynn Spencer, my partner in crime. Lynn and I, whenever we want to make some noise around here, we're always kind of relying on each other to kind of have each other's back to make some of that noise. And we also challenge each other to be better teachers, right? We're all constantly thinking about, what does it mean to be a good teacher? How do we support those who are most in need of our support? Lynn has taught me that thinking about those students, what the term is to refer to them is, they're not high need students or high risk students, they're high priority students, right? They're the students that we should be invested in the most in supporting. And I love working with you, and I look forward to continuing to work with you. And there are many others who've been sounding boards, mentors, advisors, collaborators, David Takash, Will Schiller, Dave Owen, Rick Marcus, Emily Murphy, Lori Zimmett, all have been really important sounding boards in making me a better teacher. I also want to thank some of the other teachers in my life who've kind of guided me to think about what I do and how I do it. My first teacher, my mom, who is here. My mom was a teacher when I was a small child. She gave individual lessons, language. She was a language teacher. And so I would overhear her interactions with her students in her lessons. She is the first person that I learned from that teaching is meant to be an interactive endeavor, right? It's not a one-way talking to, but it's interactive. She talks about how stupid writing workbooks are for learning languages and how it really should be an interactive process. When I was in college and taking French literature classes, we would have regular Sunday night 2-hour phone calls to talk about whatever book it was that I was trying to understand and have to write about. And so much of what I think about in terms of understanding what it means to teach, I learned from her. And my wife, Kristen, who shares the love of teaching with me. It's quite a privilege to have the opportunity to share space with somebody who cares about the very same thing that you care about, and we can be sounding boards for each other. And it's nice to be able to come home and complain about whatever it is that happened that day, and to have a partner who understands exactly what it is that you're going through. So thank you for everything that you've done to make me a better teacher. And of course, all of you students, you are, yes. Right. You are the reason that I do this. Every year you help me rethink, what is it that I'm doing up here, right? What do I do as a teacher? You make me strive to be better. You're the reason that I love what I do. And I really want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to learn from you. You are also my teachers in teaching me how to become a better teacher. You keep me on my toes. Every year, the class has a completely different vibe, and you got to get used to that vibe, and you learn from that and learn what the different needs are, adapt, right? Learn things that maybe you hadn't thought of as ways to be supportive, and then change it up so the next year you can incorporate some of those things. So thank you all for your role in doing that. And then I want to say a few things. It's traditional on these occasions to talk a little bit about teaching, right? This is an award about teaching. So offer some of my thoughts about teaching and what it means to be a good teacher. It's made me, forced me to pause and reflect on that, because it's not obvious, right? It's not, there's no, teacher's manual about what it means to be an effective teacher. I have no teaching training. Right, it's kind of an unusual thing that some faculty members will have had an opportunity to teach if they've done a PhD program and had the opportunity to be a graduate assistant, or some people come from a teaching background, or maybe they've done a fellowship or something like that before they went into teaching. Not me, here I am. So especially once I started doing the podium teaching of the first year in doctoral classes, my only guidelines, right, what I knew about teaching was my own experience as a law student. That's it. I had never sat in on anybody else's class or observed their teaching. So it's been a work in progress over the years. It really has been. Kristen and I regularly have conversation where we kind of are scratching our heads when we both have had the opportunity to have some people say, hey, you're really good at this, right? I wish more teachers would be like you. And we always kind of have to pause and think, well, what is different? What do you do differently? Why isn't this what we do the norm? And then it turns out that what we do is actually not the same thing at all. There are widely different ways of being an effective teacher, and you just have to play with it. And it's hard, right? So students, you should recognize that being an effective teacher, especially in a room with 70 or 80 students with very different needs and very different backgrounds, is quite a challenge. And trying to piece it together is always a work in progress. And so like I said, I had to reflect and I wanted to share a few things about what I believe are the things that maybe contribute to being an effective teacher, or at least that have been for me, or what are the things that have worked for me. One of the things that's always important to do is to zoom out and reflect. What are we trying to do here? What's our goal as law professors? Or what's the end game? Are we supposed to be trying to get you to be practice ready when you graduate? Are we teaching you doctrine that's tested on the bar exam? Are we teaching you how to think like a lawyer? Are we teaching you how to develop case theories, craft your arguments, and think of the doctrine just as kind of the vehicle, the tool for developing those skills? Are we more generally supposed to be engaged in creating ambitious, ethical, intellectually curious new lawyers? All of the above, right? And those things are not necessarily consistent with each other sometimes. And I don't have the answers for what the right balance is to accomplish those very many goals. But it is something that I try to be transparent about with my students, right? I try to, as best as I can, to plan each class in a way that's going to touch on at least some, if not all of those goals. And I do my best to try to take whatever small role I can have in shaping your sense of yourself as a learner, push you to understand the material a little more deeply, a little more consciously than maybe you had before you walked in. And here are a few examples of what I've done to change the way that I teach over the years, to try to accomplish those goals. One thing that I think is really important that I've recognized is to encourage you to take chances, right? Take risks. Set the bar high. I think I see that oftentimes on my evaluations of that I expect a lot from you, and I do. I want you to feel like you belong, even if you're unsure about what it takes. I don't want to dumb it down so that you can feel like you get it. I want to challenge you. Maybe when I first started doing this, my expectations were maybe a little too high, and sometimes I got a little pushback from my students. So I've kind of adapted a little bit over the years. But I do want you to be outside of your comfort zone, right? You should be outside of your comfort zone. You should be, anytime you're working through a complex problem, you shouldn't be focusing on, well, can I regurgitate back, my own words? You should be thinking about hearing your own voice, right? Reasoning through the possible arguments. And the more you do that, the closer you are to realizing that, oh yeah, I can do this. This is something I can do. And hopefully I have played a small part in getting each one of you who of current and former students in here to feel like you can do that. And I try to lead by example in terms of embracing that uncertainty, right? That you aren't comfortable with the material. I also am not necessarily always comfortable with the material. It still happens, and maybe earlier on it happened more, that you'll ask questions that maybe I should know the answer to, that Rick Marcus would certainly know the answer to. And what do you do, right, in those moments? Do you admit ignorance? Do you try to pivot, not answer at all? Do you guess at what the answer is and try to reason through it and be certain about it? Do you turn the question around on the student? What do you think should be the answer? Definitely that last one is a regular one to use. But the instinct is to do anything other than admit ignorance. But I've come to embrace that, right? Just in the same way as I want you all to embrace that you don't know, and that there isn't a clear right answer. I have come to learn that it's good to say, well, embrace it, right? That's a great question. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not sure how it goes. Let's try to work through it together. Or if it's something that really is knowable, I'll admit, I'll go check it out. I'll do a little research and I'll follow up. And hopefully, right, that also reminds you that the end goal isn't to just learn these very specific rules that have clear meaning, but to embrace the what? What are we embracing? Come on, students. What's the right answer on every law school question that I give you? It depends, right? It depends. Maybe, I don't know. Let's figure it out on the one hand, on the other hand, right? That's right. The goal isn't to just memorize the black letter law, but to and recall every nuance, but learn the foundation well enough so that you can take a look, right? You can explore what the answers might be. I've also been willing to be flexible and adapt. You will be very surprised to hear, especially after everything you've heard, those of you who are non-students who have heard about my wonderful PowerPoint slides. When I first started teaching, I was totally resistant to the idea of using PowerPoint. I have no interest in using it. I thought there was a distraction. They were boring. People just, anytime I was at a PowerPoint presentation, they were just words that I'm reading, and I'm just reading those words rather than engaging with the material. And so I had no interest in doing it. And I kept getting pushback from students to, we can't read your writing on the board. It would be really helpful if you could at least give us a little bit of a roadmap by using some sort of visual aid. And so I started doing it. And obviously I've come to embrace it. I realize now that it absolutely is the way to kind of make, right? If you do it well, it can make the concepts come to life. And obviously it also adds a little levity if I can come up with a nice little animation of an exploding car or whatever it might be, or cars blowing up in a fog. And now you know the facts are in a fog. You're going to remember that. Right, being adaptable, experimenting, right? I don't stick to just a tired lesson plan from year to year. I'm basically recreating my CIFPRO lesson plans every year when I teach the class, right? Whether that's, a complete reworking of it when we created the SAC program, or teaching it in a law and process fashion, other ways to kind of mix it up, to do things differently, to include more problem-based approaches, more explicit ways to teach you legal analysis. I change it up every time because sometimes some of those exercises fall flat. Let's try something different. And I really encourage all faculty to think about, right, to the extent that you haven't, if you think about law and process curriculum or SAC curriculum, and that's not me, embrace it, try it, volunteer to do it. You'll become a better teacher for it by forcing yourself to be explicit in connecting the doctrine to the skills. In those 13 hours of SAC instruction is really quite, I learned so much from it, including experimenting with teaching individual skills that you might think, well, I don't know how to teach that, right? I don't know how to teach IRAC organization. I don't even like IRAC. Multiple choice questions, MBE questions. I don't know anything about that. Somebody else can figure that out. Outlining, I don't know how to outline. I now teach all of those things, right? I've embraced it and come into it, and I have developed some hopefully useful tools for approaching those various things. And so I think there are risks worth taking. And be explicit about the end game. I try to be as explicit, as transparent as I can with you all about not just telling you what you should be doing, or even just showing you what you should be doing, but getting you to do it and then reflect back on that loop. I'll tell you a quick little story about the first class that I taught with original Adriana. This original Adriana and new Adriana. We were working through a problem. It was an employment discrimination class, working through a problem, kind of a mid-semester review problem, and we were kind of IRACing it together on the board. And I could see Adriana over on the side. She was just angry, frustrated. So I had to stop. I said, what's wrong? And she kind of got mad and said, why hasn't anybody else ever done this? Right? Why isn't this the normal way that we do law school? And it turns out that is now the normal way that we do law school, where we've adapted to that a way of teaching and incorporated it. Right? We now talk all the time about teaching legal analysis explicitly. And you are part of the reason that I've captured that moment. That moment really sticks out in my mind of, those are the teaching moments where I know that something is happening, right? If you get angry because something's actually sticking. All right, I will I will wrap this up. I have way too much to say. So I will skip that. All right, here's my final musing. One of the things I hope that you all think is true about me and my teaching, and that makes me an effective teacher, is that I'm more than just your teacher. I'm your mentor. I care about you deeply. I'm supportive. I'm available, which sometimes often means I'm not available to my spouse, right? Who needs to, when I text her that I'm on my way home, she'll say, yeah, I'll probably already be in bed by the time you get here. Sorry. Exactly. And so easier said than done, right? You have to be a workaholic in order to be able to have that skill, but there are ways to kind of do it in the way that Kristen does it without overworking, being the mentor, being your champion, making it more easier. I mean, everybody knows that she's more popular than I am, so why not, right? I'm always there for you. My number one priority when I walk into the classroom at the beginning of the semester and when I walk out at the end is to see you succeed. I want each and every one of you to succeed as best as you can. And it really makes me feel like I have a purpose if I see you succeed. And I've seen every one of you succeed, which is lovely. So in closing, the faculty, so thankful to be your colleague. Thank you for so many of you being here. Landing here, right, in this kind of unusual way that I got here was really the best thing that could have happened to me. I definitely have found my calling. And I'm so thankful to have had that opportunity. And to all the students, current and former, thank you for, I've had the privilege of being your teacher, your mentor. You mean the world to me, and I want to continue to have those relationships with you going forward. Thank you.